If you haven't noticed already, SPACs are absolutely exploding right now. SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company, also known as a blank check company. You can see here, filed this last Friday, an SEC filing. A new ETF will let investors participate in the stock market's $22 billion SPAC raise. Investors may soon be able to access the growing hype around SPAC offerings with the launch of a new exchange-traded fund. The Defiance Next Gen SPAC IPO ETF plans to be the first such instrument tracking the newly popular offerings, according to a Friday SEC filing. More than $22.5 billion has been raised over 55 SPAC offerings in 2020 so far, according to SPACinsider.com. The fundraising sum has already eclipsed last year's total. If the ETF comes to market, it will boast an 80% concentration in SPAC-derived IPO offerings. The rest of the ETF would invest in IPO companies themselves. I'm honestly surprised it hasn't happened yet, but more than likely that's because it's just really started catching on recently. Now, SPACs have been around for a while, but they really have taken off over the past few months. So what is a SPAC? Again, if you haven't heard of it or you're not sure and you just want to know, it is a special purpose acquisition company, as originally mentioned. Basically, a company IPOs, initial public offering, like the traditional way that most businesses end up trading and going public. But this company has no commercial operations and is formed strictly to raise capital through the IPO for the purpose of acquiring an existing company. These are known as blank check companies. Been around for decades. There's a few reasons why, but for quite a while there was a negative stigma attached to them. Just not as much information was around them. People were a little hesitant, but recently there's been quite a boom. Some very large companies have come out of this, including DraftKings, which is one of the largest right now, SPCE, and recently one that had a ton of hype, Nikola. Nikola skyrocketed after the news of their deal with Vecto IQ. You can see it's Virgin Galactic Holdings, SPCE. Taurus Acquisition Show. I own actually a little bit of all of these companies. I don't own SPAC, Spartan Energy Acquisition, but really there's been quite a craze and some very massive gains with some of these companies. Lots of volatility. It's been an interesting ride. A special purpose acquisition company is formed to raise money through an initial public offering to buy another company. At the time of their IPO, SPACs have no existing business operations or even a stated target for acquisition. Investors in SPACs can range from well-known private equity funds to the general public. SPACs have 2 years to complete an acquisition, or they must return their funds to investors. Pretty interesting concept. You can dive into this article a little bit more. Why Nikola decided to merge with the SPAC. There's a few reasons why. We can talk about it. Some of the main reasons. Renowned investor Bill Ackman, who actually just started his own SPAC, going to be a really treacherous time to go public in the traditional sense over the next 9 months or so. Because the market is so volatile right now, aren't sure, and when an IPO drops, price is determined the night before a company lists, can be heavily impacted by market conditions in a given week. It can also mean a faster time to market when they go through SPAC. The CFO, Kim Brady of Nikola, talks a little bit about why they decided to go through a SPAC instead of the traditional IPO. Thought that by going with the SPAC, we might leave some value by the table. See, that's one of the downsides. There's not as much ability to just take off. There's all these investment that gets taken place up front that kind of sets the price for a little. Big reason why you saw Nikola skyrocket and then get reduced when there was a big sell-off. That the deal that they did make valued Nikola at $3.3 billion before proceeds, included a $237 million in Vecto IQ's trust, plus a $500 million private investment in public equity, or PIPE. Nikola shareholders retained about an 80% stake in the post-merger company, with PIPE investors owning roughly 13%. Once we had looked into the PIPE investors and looked at the market volatility and COVID concerns in late February, it became clear to us at that point that having certainty, a strong valuation, and the ability to get the transaction done by June was very attractive compared to the IPO path. Another thing I've heard discussed on this matter is there could be a lot of scrutiny when a company announces that they plan on IPOing. A lot of distractions for a long time, which is one of the positives here, is that the C-level people at a company can work with the SPAC without anybody really knowing what's going on. There may be some rumors, but they're able to kind of keep it between just the top leadership, so there's not as much drama surrounding the remaining employees. This allows people to focus on the business and just have the C-suite dealing with these matters and doing what's best for the company in that regard. MP Materials CEO, another SPAC, recently had an interview on CNBC, and he discusses some of why they decided to go through SPAC. Hear his response now.
We considered a lot of options, in particular in IPO. And what I would tell you is, I went into it skeptical as well, given that there is sort of a sordid history of SPACs kind of going back a decade. But they were sort of committed long-term partners from the beginning, and the process was obvious as it unfolded that they were the right partner for us for a number of reasons. But I also think that the SPAC landscape has completely changed. I think it's not a perfect analogy. It's not a great analogy. But, if you think about high yield bonds, they were once junk bonds. And in the 1970s, that was sort of a sordid space. And SPACs, although they can be expensive, they really actually are in today's capital market a way to efficiently and quickly form capital with institutional investors on the one hand, actually getting a lot of transparency to understand the nature of what they're investing in, and really kind of properly pricing these deals and giving management teams, particularly in growth spaces, certainty as far as valuation and some of the dynamics of the transaction. So I actually think that this is, I think that SPACs are going to kind of continue to grow, take over the landscape quite a bit more.
Interesting perspective there from the CEO of MP Materials. Such a crazy time in the market. I'm really curious. So much going on. One of the most fun things to be following and investing in, some of the most volatility is in this SPAC space. Is it the rise of the SPAC? Is this going to be a bubble? I am not sure. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really curious. I'd like to know what your idea is with this space. Are you trading it? Are you holding long term? Are you steering clear? I tend to think we might be seeing a little bit of a trend with some uncertain times in the market. Could be a little bit of an uptick in this moving forward. I'm not positive though. Remember though, I have personally invested in a few of these, mainly Shill, SHLL, Taurus Acquisition Company. I have done a little bit of DraftKings. I do own a tiny bit of Nikola. I made a little bit of money on that one. It was kind of fun. I own one share left still. I'm not super excited about that company, although there's a lot of interesting things going on. This isn't investment advice, by the way, just some entertainment, some news. But I really would like to know what you are doing. If you haven't already, make sure you like this video. It really helps out the channel. On our way to 100 subscribers, baby. Over 25 right now. It's been a lot of fun so far, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. It would mean a lot. And thanks for watching this video. Until next time, peace.